Monday. It's a Monday in the big city. How we doing? Evan and Tiki on the fan for the next 4.5 hours, and there is a ton to discuss. We'll check in on the results of our quarterback bingo game we played a few months ago. Where will all the quarterbacks end up? Well, they finally ended up in places, so we'll see how right we were. The latest on the Knicks head coaching search, including reading the tea leaves on who Jalen Brunson prefers, and Pete Alonso continues to assault National League pitchers with a huge weekend. But I want to say this about the New York Yankees. While they did lose 2 out of 3 to the Boston Red Sox, I still believe the American League East is over. I still have complete confidence that they are the team to beat in the American League, despite what happened over the last 2 days. But I think it is fair, Teak, 64 games into this season, to at least be open and honest about what our Yankee concerns are.
Yeah.
And to me, and I haven't been able to say this in a very long time because Brian Cashman's done such a great job over the years of always having this feature of the team be solid, their bullpen's not very good. And even with a returning Luke Weaver, hopefully on the short end of 4 to 6 weeks, for me, I raise my hand, and we'll hear from you throughout the day, and we'll hear from you, Teak, and Sean, and everyone's concerns. The number one concern to me, and we saw it on display this weekend, the bullpen kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, and it gave away a lot, but some of that is because of starting pitching. And yesterday in particular with Carlos Rodon not being able to figure it out in the 6th inning and hitting batters and then walking batters and giving up a 3-run home run, it gave the Red Sox a lot of cushion. Now, the Yankees came back from that, but I still think, 2 years ago or 3 years ago when Judge hit 62 home runs, I felt that season was odd because it was like Aaron Judge and nobody else.
Right.
It was, if Aaron Judge quite literally doesn't get a hit, they don't score runs. And so it was so dependent on Aaron Judge. This year, it's not that way. Right, there are other players. Paul Goldsmith's playing some pretty good baseball right now. I think Trent Grisham has been good, even though this last month was rough. Ben Rice has been a revelation, and I think every Yankee fan is excited to see him grow and what he's going to do. But yesterday, Aaron Judge was Herculean, Evan. 3 out of 4, hit 2 home runs in this game. And you would think, going back to the history of Aaron Judge here, that when he has a day like that, it's just KD bar the door. Yeah. Right? They're winning, and it's a runaway. He got smoked.
Yeah.
Right? And there were parts of this game where they were down significantly. And so, to me, it is Aaron Judge is a superhuman baseball player. But there's just not enough around him to follow him. Right, to go with him. He's like carrying his trident, like, let's go, march forward. And every now and then someone comes with him, but too often, not enough guys do. What he's doing this year is absurd. Right? He's going to hit close to 400 and probably have 60 home runs again. And
it's a better year.
130 RBIs.
It's a better year than even the 2 monster years he had in the last 3 years.
I agreed, but it still doesn't feel enough. That's concerning to me.
And that is despite the Yankees scoring the most runs in the American League.
Yes.
And, being a big-time offense. And like you said, getting some production outside of Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge. So that's still your number one concern, the offense after Judge?
Maybe it's recency because of what we just saw, but we saw 2 games out of this Red Sox series.
I also saw them score 23 runs. I mean, they scored plenty of runs. Like, even yesterday, they scored 7 runs. To me, Carlos Rodon obviously imploded after the bottom of the 5th inning or after the top of the 5th inning when there were 2 outs and nobody on. He has a 2-0 lead, and he's cruising to another really good start. Then, obviously, it all fell apart when he walked Rafael and he gave up the home run to Campbell, and then what happened in the 6th inning. But to me, what made it worse is the bullpen's not any good. And they let a close game slip away. And right now, here's the real kind of gauge I have for bullpens. Who do you trust? Ask yourself that if you're a Yankee fan. Who do you trust?
The guy with the hamstring injury?
Yeah, that's it. And he's not walking through that door yet. I mean, maybe Tim Hill to a degree if he's facing a lefty, if he's in the right lane facing left-handed batters. But outside of that, it's not a long list of guys that I would trust. And this is a very weird conversation because the Yankee bullpen has been mostly awesome in the Brian Cashman era. I mean, you look back over the last 5 years, they're always a top 5 bullpen when it comes to ERA, year after year after year. As we sit here today, they are 15th in Major League Baseball in bullpen ERA. That's middle of the pack with a 3.80 ERA. So, to me, it's the bullpen.
I think it's Aaron Boone. And I think it's Aaron Boone's handling of the bullpen. Listen, let's take a little trip down memory lane for a second. The World Series, while everybody harps on the fifth inning in Game 5, I will always, as most Yankee fans remember, Nestor Cortez, not Tim Hill, Game 1, and his handling of the bullpen, that was just a microcosm. Here we are, Evan. This dates back the last 2 games. Saturday night, what he did with Ian Hamilton having Devin Williams up, I'm sorry, is a disgrace. He let Ian Hamilton come into a game that the Yankees and that offense that Tiki was just talking about fought and climbed their way back down 1 run. Ian Hamilton, bink, bink, bink. First 3 guys get on. Devin Williams doesn't come in, doesn't even care to come in. He lets Ian Hamilton implode that game. And then last night, all right, you don't go to Devin Williams. You bring in Johnny Loizaga as that fine inning, brings him out. Loizaga's not a 2-inning guy. Lets that implode. The moment it begins to crumble, 2 runs there, he goes to the human white flag and Brett Hedrick too. And I understand that they're not deep in the pen, but we didn't see Devin Williams the last 2 nights. I don't know, Evan, what happened to the forward-thinking baseball where you go to your best reliever that's out there in the high-leverage spot, so that's it? We're just only using Devin Williams in closing spots now without Weaver?
Well,
I thought it was a mess the way Boone handled the pen the last 2 days.
2 things can be true. I can agree with you on the way he handled the bullpen Saturday, but also remind you that there's very few guys in this bullpen you trust. And the guy you started by saying you trust the most has a 6.08 ERA, Devin Williams. It's not like they're loaded with trustable arms out of this bullpen.
Okay, he has a 6.08 ERA, and I don't love Devin. I've been on the train. Don't sign him at the end of the year.
Right.
But he has pitched better over the last month and a half.
He has.
And I just look at this spot now with Weaver out. We talked about when Weaver comes back in 4 to 6 weeks, we'll figure out using all the relievers in the best spots. Shouldn't that be activated now? Because Williams should have come into that game Saturday night. And the moment he didn't and it imploded, how did you let the game get out of hand yesterday? And now you didn't use him either night. And look, there's a balancing act to get through a whole season, but there's nothing more demoralizing to a team than allowing their offense to fight back in a game and you mishandle the bullpen to keep them in the game once they fought back.
Yeah, it's just not a concern I'm going to have in October. Like his decision to go to Nestor Cortez versus Tim Hill, which was a controversial decision, wasn't about playing for the 162. The decision to not go to Devin Williams over the weekend was playing for the 162.
Okay,
right.
But either
He's not
way,
going to do that in the postseason. He's not going to need to do that in the postseason.
Yeah, but shouldn't you? And especially in against the rival, even though it's not really the rival. We've determined it's the Los Angeles Dodgers, not the Boston Red Sox. But this is a rivalry game, and it's the rubber match of the 3-game series. You know what I mean? So to me, why not? And especially because you have a day off. Right? It's not as if...
Perfect example, Tiki. And one more on that before, just on Saturday night, when you're saying, oh, well, you're playing for the 162. Was he playing for the 162 when he cautionarily sat Volpe and Jazz Chisholm on Saturday night not to be in the lineup, but yet he deemed the game important enough to bring them in the fight back later on in the game, but it wasn't important enough to go to Devin Williams then and keep Ian Hamilton in? Like, those 2 things didn't add up. So if it was that cautionary playing for 162, then just leave Volpe and Jazz out of that game Saturday night. You sat him for precautionary reasons. It didn't add up with his bullpen decisions. He's a mess right now, and I love Boone.
A lot of things change over the years. One thing stays the same. Yankee fans' default is to blame Aaron Boone. And you're an example of it. The default is it's Aaron Boone's
The
fault.
only thing I fault Aaron Boone for is he left Carlos Rodon in for a batter too long.
I disagree with that. I know it didn't work out, but when did you want to take him out? And
After he walked
Ref Snyder?
Ref Snyder. Because look, he was struggling with what's his name? The DH. I'm forgetting.
Rafael Devers?
He was struggling with Devers. And he ultimately hits him.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then he walks Ref Snyder. And you could tell his control just wasn't. He was frustrated.
Yeah.
You could see it. And then he gives up a 3-run home run. It puts the Red Sox in a comfortable lead.
But you know what I think that was? So what was weird about last night is the Yankees are up 2-0, and Carlos Rodon is dealing. And he looks great. And he's had a wonderful season. He's proven all the critics wrong. He can handle New York. He's like the pseudo second ace after Max Fried. There's no sign of him falling off with 2 outs and nobody on in the 5th inning, and then he walks Rafaela, gives up the home run to Campbell. And even then, I'm like, all right, fart in the wind. I mean, it stings.
Right, because it was a lucky home run.
It was kind of lucky.
Yes.
And I go into the 6th inning thinking, all right, let me see if I can get another inning out of Carlos Rodon. He hits Rafael Devers, who's a tremendous hitter. He walks Ref Snyder. I'm still there thinking he's going to get Narvaez out. But he can get through this inning.
But this is what happens with Rodon. As soon as he walks somebody, he's susceptible for a home run.
Yeah, but this leads back to my initial point. A part of why I'm not in a rush to take Carlos Rodon out is because this bullpen does not feature many arms I trust. Now, it will get better when Luke Weaver returns, and they probably will be very aggressive at the trade deadline. In fact, this may be their priority at the trade deadline.
Yeah, because they're scoring runs. You're right. I mean, look, they were down, whatever the score was, 7-3. They came back. Yeah. They made it a game, 7-5, and then they get to 7, and it was the bullpen that gave it up.
They scored 23 runs this weekend.
Right. They scored 7 yesterday.
Yeah, they scored 7 on Saturday and Sunday, and they lost both games. Though this leads to one other concern I have about the Yankees. The bullpen is my number one, and I think they will try to fix it at the deadline. But here's concern number 2, and you sort of briefly touched on it. You made a comment about Trent Grisham, how he hasn't really done much in a month.
Yeah.
Trent Grisham and Ben Rice, 2 guys who got off to wonderful starts. Let's face it, they haven't hit in a month. Both of them. Going back to May 13th, so a little bit less than a month, Trent Grisham is hitting 177 with one home run and a 550 OPS.
Wow.
It is possible that Trent Grisham is just going back to being what we thought he was at the beginning of the season, which is a 4th outfielder. Ben Rice, who we're still not sure about, since April 30th, that's a month and a half of a sample size, he's hitting 208 with a 666 OPS. Now, the good news is Giancarlo Stanton. That's the good news. Right. The good news is there is someone walking through that door who can change things. But those 2 guys specifically were 2 of the big surprises to start the year in terms of how impactful they were offensively. And I think it's fair to wonder, well, what are they?
Yeah, it's hard to know because it's not as if Trent Grisham is old and washed, because he's only 28 years old. But you saw this moment where he just felt like this is a perfect spot for him. Playing center field, which is great because he's a fantastic center fielder, Gold Glover, as we all know. And he's raking in the leadoff spot, getting extra base hits, home runs, etc. Maybe he just needed to be in the right spot, the right change of scenery to become a star or semi-star, whatever you want to call him. And now you don't feel that anymore. And so without that, you just now become dependent, even more so, on Aaron Judge being Aaron Judge. And he is being Aaron Judge.
He's been amazing.
But everybody else is not following suit.
Yeah, I think what's good about this Grisham-Rice situation is Stanton is on his way back. And even though you can't rely on him to play every single day, at least you are getting a reinforcement. The other thing to keep an eye on in terms of concerns is the rotation after you get past the big 2.5 of Rodon, Fried, and sort of Clark Schmidt. What is Will Warren? What is Ryan Yarbrough, who got his you-know-what packed over the weekend? Now, they do have Marcus Stroman slowly making his way back. I'm not sure how many people trust him. And Luis Gil, I guess, is going to come back, though we haven't really heard a concrete update on him.
I haven't heard anything on Luis Gil.
But the rotation after the big 2.5, does that give you any pause?
Not, because you know what? This rotation is going to be good enough. You mentioned the AL East being over to navigate the 162. And I'm not in as big a rush to see Luis Gil right now, but if Luis Gil comes back and he's throwing in August and he's throwing in September, and I do have trust in Max Fried, he's healthy, we'll put a pin in Carlos Rodon. I do think they're going to have enough to navigate October series, and I think they have enough to push through the 162. I think just, you know the way it is, once these guys in the playoffs go through 2 turns, you're itching to go to the bullpen anyway. I think this team's going to need 2 reinforcements in the pen, and I'm less worried when you think about the long-term goals about what they have internally at the starting rotation.
That's why I agree with you that the bullpen, or that's why I say it's the bullpen. Because you're right. When you get to October where the Yankees are headed, you're going to heavily rely on arms to get big outs. And right now I look at this bullpen, and I basically see one guy I fully trust. Yeah. And that one guy who I fully trust is not active right now in Luke Weaver. I'm getting back there with Devin Williams. I think we all are. And Tim Hill is great in the role that he's in.
Yeah.
But I can't put him as a big-time trust guy because you really only trust him to get a lefty out in a big spot.
Right, and he had some bad luck yesterday because brought in to close it down with the bases loaded. He threw a strike and should have been 1 and 2, called it a ball, and then he got hit right back up the middle, which gave another insurance run for the Red Sox. So I like Tim Hill, but I do agree with you, Evan. He's limited in what he's available to do.
The New York Yankees are in first place. In my humble opinion, they will never see second place for the rest of the season, but they're not a perfect team. We'll get to your calls on what your biggest concern is as we move into we're really getting close to the first half of the season being over. We're at 64 games. We're almost there. We'll get your calls coming up, 888-808-1019.